In the heart of Europe, a fiscal drama is unfolding that could reshape the economic landscape of the continent and send ripples across the global financial system. France, long considered one of the pillars of the European Union, finds itself teetering on the edge of a financial precipice, with newly appointed Prime Minister Michel Barnier stepping onto the high wire of fiscal policy to attempt a daring balancing act. Let's begin by painting the picture in stark numerical terms. France is grappling with a staggering €3 trillion, $3.3 trillion, debt burden. To put this into perspective, imagine every French citizen, from the newborn in Normandy to the retiree in Provence, carrying a debt of roughly €45,000 on their shoulders. It's a weight that threatens to crush the very foundations of the French economy and, by extension, the stability of the Eurozone. But numbers alone don't tell the full story. This debt is not just a figure on a balance sheet. It's a living, breathing entity that demands feeding. Each year, France must cough up €50 billion in interest payments alone. That's more than the annual budget for France's vaunted education system. It's as if the nation is paying for a second military without getting any additional security in return. Enter Michel Barnier, a seasoned political operator now tasked with the Herculean labor of steering France away from the fiscal abyss. His strategy: a modern-day Robin Hood approach that aims to take from the rich and give to the depleted state coffers. In a televised address that had all of France glued to their screens, Barnier laid out his vision: increase taxes on big businesses and the wealthiest citizens. It's a move that echoes the sentiment of many French citizens who have long felt that multinational corporations and the uber-rich have not been paying their fair share. But Barnier's plan is more nuanced than a simple wealth redistribution scheme. He's walking a tightrope of his own, promising to shield the middle class and workers from tax hikes while still generating the revenue needed to chip away at that mountain of debt. It's a delicate balancing act that requires the precision of a surgeon and the courage of a lion tamer. France's fiscal woes don't exist in a vacuum. As one of the largest economies in the European Union, France's financial health is inextricably linked to the stability of the entire Eurozone. A French fiscal crisis could trigger a domino effect, potentially destabilizing weaker economies like Italy and Spain, and even shaking the foundations of economic powerhouses like Germany. Moreover, in an era of globalized finance, the repercussions could extend far beyond Europe's borders. American investors, Chinese creditors, and emerging market economies all have a stake in France's fiscal future. The interconnectedness of global financial markets means that a sneeze in Paris could cause a cold in New York, Tokyo, and everywhere in between. Barnier's most pressing concern, however, isn't just about balancing the books. It's about maintaining France's credibility in the eyes of international bond markets. As he pointedly remarked, "A lot of our debt is on international markets. We must preserve France's credibility." This statement underscores a fundamental truth of modern governance. In the age of global finance, national sovereignty is often at the mercy of faceless bond traders and credit rating agencies. France must dance to the tune of market confidence, lest it face skyrocketing borrowing costs that could turn a manageable debt into an insurmountable crisis. But Barnier's plan isn't just about raising revenue. He's also calling for a collective effort to cut spending and increase government efficiency. This dual approach recognizes that solving France's fiscal puzzle requires both increasing income and reducing outgo. The call for greater efficiency in the French state apparatus touches on a long-standing debate about the role of government in French society. France has long prided itself on its comprehensive social safety net and extensive public services. But in an era of tight budgets and global competition, can the French model of a strong state survive unchanged? Barnier's challenge will be to streamline government operations without dismantling the social protections that many French citizens see as fundamental to their way of life. It's a task that requires not just economic acumen but also deep political savvy and a keen understanding of French cultural values. At the heart of Barnier's proposed reforms lies a fundamental question of equity. Who should bear the burden of fiscal reform? By targeting big businesses and the wealthiest citizens, Barnier is tapping into a vein of populist sentiment that has been growing not just in France but across much of the developed world. The aftermath of the 2008 financial crisis, coupled with the more recent economic disruptions caused by the COVID-19 pandemic, has heightened awareness of economic inequality. Many citizens feel that while they've struggled with stagnant wages and rising costs of living, large corporations and the ultra-wealthy have continued to prosper. Barnier's approach, therefore, isn't just about raising revenue. It's about restoring a sense of fairness to the economic system. By asking those who have benefited most from globalization and technological change to contribute more, he's attempting to rebuild the social contract that has been strained in recent years. However, this strategy is not without risks. France already has a reputation for high taxes and a complex regulatory environment. There's a danger that further increasing the tax burden on businesses could drive investment and jobs out of the country, potentially exacerbating the very economic problems Barnier is trying to solve. While Barnier has promised to shield the middle class from tax increases, this group will undoubtedly feel the effects of any major fiscal reforms. The middle class in France, as in many developed countries, has been squeezed in recent years by slow wage growth and rising costs for essentials like housing and education. Even if their taxes don't increase directly, middle-class French citizens may find themselves indirectly affected by changes to public services or shifts in the job market resulting from new policies aimed at big businesses. Barnier will need to navigate these concerns carefully to maintain public support for his reform agenda. France's fiscal challenges cannot be viewed in isolation from its position in the global economy. As a key member of the European Union and one of the world's largest economies, France's economic policies have far-reaching implications. For one, any major shift in French fiscal policy could impact the delicate balance within the Eurozone. Countries like Germany, which have long advocated for stricter fiscal discipline, will be watching France's moves closely. If France is seen as backsliding on deficit reduction, it could strain relations within the EU and potentially weaken the euro. Moreover, in an era of rising economic nationalism and trade tensions, France's approach to taxing multinational corporations could have diplomatic repercussions. The United States, for instance, has previously pushed back against European efforts to increase taxes on American tech giants. Barnier will need to balance domestic fiscal needs with international economic diplomacy. While much of the focus is on France's debt and immediate fiscal challenges, any long-term solution must also address the country's position in the rapidly evolving global economy. France has been working to position itself as a European tech hub, with initiatives like the French Tech Visa program aimed at attracting international talent. Barnier's fiscal reforms will need to walk a fine line between raising necessary revenue and maintaining an environment conducive to innovation and entrepreneurship. This balance is crucial not just for addressing current fiscal woes, but for ensuring France's economic competitiveness in the decades to come. The reforms could potentially include targeted incentives for R&D and high-tech industries, even as overall corporate tax rates increase. Such a nuanced approach could help reconcile the competing demands of fiscal responsibility and economic dynamism. No discussion of France's economic future would be complete without considering the role of climate change and the transition to a green economy. France has been a leader in international climate efforts, and its domestic policies reflect a commitment to reducing carbon emissions and promoting sustainable development. Barnier's fiscal reforms will likely need to incorporate this green agenda, potentially through mechanisms like carbon pricing or incentives for clean energy investments. This adds another layer of complexity to the fiscal puzzle, but also presents opportunities. Green technologies could be a source of economic growth and job creation, potentially helping to offset some of the pain of fiscal tightening. While the economic imperatives for reform are clear, the political realities in France are far more complex. The country has a long history of public resistance to economic reforms, as evidenced by movements like the Yellow Vest protests that erupted in response to proposed fuel tax increases. Barnier and his government will need to navigate a political landscape fraught with potential pitfalls. The success of their reform agenda will depend not just on its economic merits, but on their ability to build a broad coalition of support across French society. This will require a delicate balancing act of communication and compromise. Barnier will need to convince the French public that short-term sacrifices are necessary for long-term prosperity, while also demonstrating that the burden of reform is being shared fairly across society. France's fiscal challenges also raise questions about the role of the European Union in managing member states' economic policies. The EU has mechanisms in place, such as the Stability and Growth Pact, to encourage fiscal discipline among member states. However, these rules have often been bent or outright ignored in times of economic stress. Barnier's reform efforts will take place within this complex EU framework. On one hand, pressure from EU institutions could provide political cover for difficult reforms. On the other, too rigid an application of EU fiscal rules could constrain France's options and potentially exacerbate economic hardships. The outcome of France's fiscal reforms could have significant implications for the future of EU economic governance. A successful French turnaround could strengthen arguments for greater EU-level coordination of economic policies. Conversely, if France struggles to implement reforms within the current EU framework, it could fuel calls for a rethinking of the bloc's economic rules. Underlying France's immediate fiscal challenges is a longer-term demographic trend that threatens the sustainability of its social model. Like many developed countries, France is grappling with an aging population, which puts increasing pressure on pension systems and healthcare budgets. Any comprehensive fiscal reform will need to address these demographic realities. This could involve difficult discussions about raising the retirement age, adjusting pension benefits, or finding new ways to fund social services. These are politically sensitive topics, but they cannot be ignored if France is to achieve long-term fiscal stability. Barnier's reform agenda will likely need to include measures to address these demographic challenges, potentially through a combination of policy changes and efforts to boost France's birth rate or attract skilled immigrants. While much of the focus is on cutting costs and raising revenue, France's long-term fiscal health will also depend on its ability to compete in the global knowledge economy. This means that even in a time of fiscal tightening, investments in education and skills training cannot be neglected. Barnier and his team will need to find ways to maintain or even increase funding for critical educational initiatives, while still meeting overall fiscal targets. This could involve reallocating resources from other areas, seeking private sector partnerships, or finding innovative ways to deliver education more efficiently. The success of these efforts will be crucial not just for France's economic competitiveness, but also for addressing issues of social mobility and inequality that contribute to political instability. One potential avenue for both cost savings and economic growth lies in the digital transformation of the French economy and government. By leveraging technologies like artificial intelligence, cloud computing, and data analytics, France could potentially streamline government operations, reduce costs, and create new economic opportunities. Barnier's reform agenda could include a significant push for digital transformation across both the public and private sectors. This could involve investments in digital infrastructure, programs to boost digital skills among the workforce, and efforts to position France as a leader in emerging technologies. While such initiatives might require upfront investments, they could pay significant dividends in terms of increased efficiency and economic competitiveness over the long term. France's fiscal reforms are taking place against a backdrop of significant global economic uncertainty. From ongoing trade tensions to the lingering effects of the COVID-19 pandemic and concerns about inflation, the global economic environment is fraught with potential pitfalls. Barnier and his team will need to remain flexible and responsive to changing global conditions as they implement their reform agenda. This might involve building in contingencies for various economic scenarios or being prepared to adjust policies quickly in response to external shocks. The success of France's reforms could have implications far beyond its borders, potentially serving as a model for other countries grappling with similar fiscal challenges in an uncertain global economy. As Michel Barnier embarks on his high-stakes mission to reform France's finances, he carries on his shoulders not just the hopes of a nation but potentially the future of the European project. The success or failure of his efforts could reverberate far beyond the borders of France, influencing economic policies and political debates across the continent and around the world. The challenges are immense. A mountain of debt, skeptical financial markets, a populace weary of austerity, and a global economic environment fraught with uncertainty. Yet within these challenges lie opportunities for innovation, for reimagining the social contract, for positioning France at the forefront of the industries of the future. Barnier's approach, targeting the wealthy and big businesses while promising to protect the middle class and workers, is a bold gambit. It's an attempt to thread the needle between fiscal responsibility and social justice, between the demands of global markets and the needs of French citizens. As we watch this drama unfold, we're witnessing more than just a fiscal reform effort. We're seeing a test of whether the European social model can adapt to the realities of the 21st century global economy. Can a nation provide robust social protections and maintain economic competitiveness in an era of fierce global competition and rapid technological change? The stakes could not be higher. A successful French turnaround could breathe new life into the European project, demonstrating that it's possible to combine fiscal discipline with social solidarity. Failure, on the other hand, could accelerate the centrifugal forces threatening to pull the EU apart. For ordinary French citizens, The coming months and years will likely bring both challenges and opportunities. There may be short-term pain as reforms are implemented, but also the potential for a more dynamic, equitable, and sustainable economic future. For those professionally engaged in finance, France's fiscal reforms offer a real-time case study in the complexities of managing a modern economy. From the intricacies of tax policy to the challenges of maintaining market confidence, the French experience will provide valuable lessons for policymakers and financial professionals around the world. As we move forward, all eyes will be on France. In the boulevards of Paris, the factories of Lyon, and the vineyards of Bordeaux, a nation is embarking on a journey that could reshape its future and influence the course of the global economy. It's a journey fraught with peril but also filled with promise, a true test of political will, economic wisdom, and national character. In the end, the success of France's fiscal reforms will depend not just on the policies themselves, but on the ability of leaders like Barnier to build a shared vision of a prosperous and equitable future. It will require sacrifice, innovation, and above all, a renewed sense of national purpose. As France stands at this crossroads, the world watches and waits. The decisions made in Paris in the coming months could echo through the corridors of power in Brussels, Berlin, and beyond for years to come. In navigating its fiscal challenges, France is not just charting its own course, it's helping to shape the future of Europe and the global economic order. This is more than an economic story. It's a human story, a political story, and ultimately, a story about the kind of society we want to build in the 21st century. As we follow France's journey, we're not just tracking numbers on a balance sheet. We're witnessing the evolution of democracy, capitalism, and social justice in real time. The road ahead for France is long and uncertain, but the destination, a more prosperous, equitable, and sustainable future, is a goal worth striving for. As Barnier and his team embark on this monumental task, they carry with them the hopes and dreams of a nation, and perhaps the future of the European experiment itself.